Change is coming to Windward Oʻahu. 2 seats in the State House which represent Kailua, Kāneʻohe Bay and Waimānalo are being vacated by longtime incumbents. In the Democratic primary for District 50, Patrick Branco faces off against Micah Pregitzer, while in the Republican primary for District 51, Doni Chong faces off against Kukana Kama-Toth. Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of Election 2020 on Insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Yunji Denise. Tonight we're covering 2 primary races in the State House of Representatives. District 51 covers Kailua and Waimānalo. Tonight we'll hear from 2 women trying to win the Republican nomination. But up first, via the internet, the 2 candidates vying for the Democratic nomination for District 50. They want the seat currently held by Republican Cynthia Thielen, who decided not to run for re-election after serving the Kailua and Kāneʻohe Bay communities since 1990. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email, call, or tweet your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and on the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. Let's meet the Democratic candidates for State House District 50. Micah Pregitzer has lived in Kailua for more than 30 years and is a science teacher at Kalāheo High School. He just completed a term as the Windward Chapter President for the Hawaii State Teachers Association as a member of HSTA's Board of Directors. Patrick Branco was born and raised in Kailua and is a Kamehameha Schools and Hawaii Pacific University graduate. He served as a U.S. diplomat doing tours in Colombia, Pakistan, and Venezuela. Welcome, both of you. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Both of you, of course, are political newcomers. Mr. Branco, we'll start with you. What makes you want to run for this race, and why are you qualified for the job?
Absolutely. The reason why I'm running for this race is because in Kailua, I was very fortunate to have a great childhood. This is where my great-grandparents moved back in the 50s, and this is a place that really formed me and shaped me. And I believe that because of my upbringing in Kailua, I had the ability to succeed on the international stage as a U.S. diplomat. And I'm very thankful for those opportunities. Why I do believe I'm best suited for the position is because I believe that my previous experiences as a U.S. diplomat make me uniquely suited for the position. For example, I believe that I'm a negotiator. That's something I did abroad in Colombia, Pakistan, Venezuela, working across different cultures, working with cultures that didn't speak the same language, and being able to build consensus to move policy. I also believe that I'm an advocate as well. For example, when the affordable housing project was being proposed, I found out about it, and I truly believe that the community needed to know what was happening when it came to that project. And so I threw it out there to make sure that our community knew. And that's my promise to the community as well, is that when I know, they'll know as well, because our community needs to be prepared for whatever comes their way.
Mr. Pregitzer, same question to you. What makes you qualified for this position?
So I grew up here in Kailua. I've been here for over 30 years, and I've been teaching here at Kalāheo High School for the last 17. Well, I'm going into my 17th year. During that time, I've been actively involved with the teachers union, fighting to improve public education here in Hawaii, as well as fighting in our community to advocate for our community and its citizens to protect access to beaches, protect the environment, going to city council meetings and Kailua community board meetings to advocate for and against bills that either were in the best interest of the people here or weren't. So I feel that I've been here. I know what the community wants and what's in the best interest of the people and the community. And I think that makes me best suited for the job.
As we noted at the top, Cynthia Thielen has held this seat for quite a long time, 30 years in this position. Mr. Pregitzer, we'll start with you. What positions of hers would you continue to hold, and what would you do differently?
Well, I believe that me and Cynthia Thielen have a lot of things in common. She was very strong on environmental issues especially, and that's something that I feel strongly about. Her work over the last couple of decades to bring industrial hemp here has finally started to show fruit and recently passed through our legislature this session. Those are the types of things that I will continue to work for. Women's rights and equal rights for all. Social justice issues she was very strong on, and those are the types of things that I also will be fighting for if I'm elected. I feel that money needs to be used from our state, from our taxes, to benefit those that are most at risk in our community. We need to work on better funding for affordable housing, to make a living wage for our workers here, for our low-income workers, and work on paid family leave and sick leave as well.
Okay, Mr. Branco, same question to you. What policies of Cynthia Thielen would you advance, and what do you think that you would do differently if elected to this seat?
Cynthia Thielen was a very strong advocate for our community. She was an independent voice for Kailua, and I feel that I will be a strong independent voice for Kailua and Kāneʻohe Bay as well. One of her policies that she's been proposing over the years was to stop the GE tax on over-the-counter medication as well as a basket of foods. And I feel this is another necessary policy that is even more relevant now with our current economics situation. We need to make sure that our working class families have relief, and this is a policy that I would forward. The other similarity is Cynthia, as well as myself, had the ability to work across aisles. As my former career in all different forms of government, I was able to build bridges, able to work across the aisle, and to make sure that we forwarded positive initiatives that impacted our constituencies. Ways that were different, Cynthia Thielen was an environmental attorney. My background is in economics and in diplomacy, so I just don't have that experience like she did. But just like her, I would reach out to various parties to make sure that I understand and that I know what is best in terms of environment.
Okay, let's talk about the budget, because of course the Ledge has a big role in that. Governor Ige has said that the state is facing a $2 billion loss over the next two fiscal years thanks to COVID-19. He says that all options are on the table. That could include furloughs, that could include pay cuts, even for teachers. Mr. Pregitzer, of course, that would affect you and your colleagues. Is that a reasonable request, or is that a reasonable line item perhaps to address, or are there other ways you think that the state could better save money?
I don't think at this point that is a reasonable request. I think that should be absolute last option. We have received billions in federal aid already, and as well as $2 billion, I believe, in federal loans. So that alone right there could tide us through at least a full year of revenue loss, if not 2 full years of revenue loss. So I think looking at cutting pay for our working class citizens is the last thing we should be doing, and that's only going to deepen any recession that we go into. We need to continue to fund our programs that we've agreed to fund, and that's going to be the quickest way that we're able to pull out of this recession.
What are some areas, though, that you think that we could cut if it's not teachers? Of course, you know, no one wants to cut the salaries of anyone, but these are going to be some pretty tough times. Are there places that the state is too fat right now?
I feel most areas in our budget we're underspending, especially things like education, and cutting back on those would drastically hurt and harm those industries further, and would take longer for our state to recover from this pandemic and this recession. So I don't think that should be any option that we're looking at right now. There's, as I said before, there's been ample money that has been given to the state from the federal government, and because of our extremely high credit rating, we have been able to borrow $2 billion for extremely low interest rates, which will also help us through this time. But cutting workers' pay is the last thing we should be looking at.
Okay, Mr. Branco, what do you think? How does the state address this tremendous budget shortfall that we're facing?
Absolutely. Some projections range for the budget shortfall to be between 1.5 billion to 2.3 billion. And so I think the first step is we need to max out the rainy day fund. Those are funds that are, it's not only raining, it's storming right now. And so that's the first area we need to start. Secondly, we also need to look at special funds that can't be currently used. For example, there's 25 million in the substance abuse fund that we can't use right now. So looking at those special funds and moving those funds over. Also, we need to look at capital expenditures as well. For example, Aloha Stadium right now is being funded with $20 million in that budget. So we need to convert that to GEO bonds and move that money over. So the last resort should be cuts. I do not advocate for cuts, but we need to look at creative ways to look at the various sources of money and revenue that we have, make sure that's shifted, because when we do actually, economists have said that when there is cuts to jobs, that has a 1.5 exponential factor on the economy. So we need to make sure that we are looking at our funds, moving them over, and make sure we're spending prudently and efficiently.
Mr. Branco, let's talk about the homeless issue. We have a question here from Luann on Facebook, and she says they are not hearing our concerns about the homeless issue. I'm assuming that she means they as in state lawmakers. What would you do differently? What can the state do to address these concerns? In parts of that district, you see lots of tents on the beach. You see, plenty of people who are indigent throughout that community. What could you do right away to help as a state lawmaker?
Absolutely. When you look at the homeless issue, right, there's many different categories of those who are houseless. There's those who have mental health issues, those who suffer from drug abuse, those who are tourists that are coming here, or actually are just transient. So we need to have a multifaceted approach to hit the tourism the tourism issue here in Hawaii. First of all, we need to. I'm a strong supporter of Dr. Josh Green's Housing First policy. I believe that's one of the first things we need to do. We need to house our homeless population first. Another thing is a lot of our homeless population go to the emergency on a regular basis, and that costs the state a lot. Actually, for our $2 billion Medicaid budget, we actually spend 61% of that on only 3% of the population. So one policy that I do believe is that we can look into is actually prescribing housing as a way to solve the homeless issue. And so that's something that I wanted to look into. A study was done in 2017 by the state legislature, and that's something that could be a possible solution as well. Additionally, we just need to make sure that our housing for our homeless are clean and properly cared for. That's important. Lastly, another opportunity I think for us is the LEAD program that is in partnership with the city and county. And so when police officers do their sweeps, they go as social workers and they offer to the homeless population that they can get a ticket or they can see a social worker. And this has been highly successful. It's been funded for about $250,000. And this could be another easy place where we could fund to help with this. So I do believe also we need to hire a lot more social workers.
Mr. Pregitzer, same question to you. What would you say to Luann? What can be done from the legislative perspective to help with the homeless issue?
Yes, this is a multifaceted problem. It's one that's definitely growing in our area, especially. I think one of the things we should be looking at as a legislature is increasing the funding for the rapid Ohana rehousing so that when people are becoming homeless and are about to lose their house, they are not put out on the street and instead are rapidly placed into affordable housing units. We also have to increase the number of affordable housing units that we have in the state, especially in Kailua. We are well under the last really affordable housing units we had were built in the early 90s. So we need to work with the state to make those available and develop more affordable housing units in Kailua. Also for the healthcare, we need to invest in our healthcare. I believe that if a Medicare for all approach would save the state a lot of money, especially with houseless individuals who aren't going to have insurance that aren't able to cover their medical costs. This is a way that we could help them and provide medical care for them, as well as cutting our overall costs in the state for medical services. And then increasing our wraparound services that go out to areas with high amounts of houselessness, that provide social workers, that provide showers for individuals, mailboxes for individuals, job corps to try and find people jobs and get them off the street and back working again. So those are the approaches that I'd be looking at.
You know, you've both touched on the affordable housing piece, and of course there is the proposed Kawainui Street affordable apartment complex has drawn pushback. Developers, I just want to make sure that I get the facts right here, so forgive me for looking down. Developers of the 73-unit building want exemptions for zoning density and also for the height limits there. Residents, of course, say affordable housing is needed, to address the homeless issue, among other things. What's your take on this project? Mr. Branco, we'll start with you.
Yeah. So when I found out about this project back in May, the community wasn't aware. And so I sent out a neutral survey to get the community's input on this. And the responses I got back was that this was the wrong location. this affordable housing is needed in Kailua, but this is just not the spot. And one of the big reasons that the community voiced was that it was not following the R5 residential zoning. It's the proposed building is actually a 4-story building, and with the residential zoning, it should be actually 2 stories. So we went through the process, and I feel what was left out was the community input. The community was not engaged throughout this at all. And so I made sure that the community was aware. I also made sure that the community was prepared with information. I showed up to all the neighborhood board meeting and testified on behalf of stopping the project. I do believe there's affordable housing needs in Kailua, and I think we can do that through several different options. There's actually available land that the city and county uses, and I do know that the city and county is interested in doing maybe property swaps. And I do think that this type of project isn't the only option. In Hawaii, we only have one veterans home, which is in Hilo, which is a shame. I would love for Kailua to have a veterans home here in Hawaii, in Kailua. The other thing would be looking at possible different models for Hawaiian homestead in Kailua, as well as kapuna housing. There are options for affordable housing in Kailua, but we need to make sure that the community is always tied into the process. And that was what I believe will help find affordable housing in Kailua.
Mr. Pregitzer, what's your take on this project?
So personally, I'm a big supporter of affordable housing. As I said before, Hawaii and especially Kailua is in dire need of more affordable housing. If you've been here for 20, 30 plus years, you have witnessed friends and family that have been forced to move out of the area and out of the state because they can no longer afford the rising cost to live here. And so if this is not the affordable housing unit that Kailua needs, if elected, I will work to provide more affordable housing in Kailua, looking for areas, possibly state land. There's a spot that we could possibly use to build a large affordable housing unit that's not right next to homes. So we could build it, possibly the 4 stories that the developer has planned for the Kainui location. I was hopeful at least that the developer would be able to bring down the size of the development a little bit and make some of the residents in the area happier, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen. But hopefully a compromise will be able to be reached, but if not, I will work to find somewhere else to provide affordable housing for Kailua.
Both of you have lived in that area for a long time. You have strong ties to that community. Over the years, we've seen Kailua town itself, let's talk about that, change quite a bit with the influx of more and more tourists. We're talking, of course, about pre-COVID-19 times, but going forward, a lot of the complaints that we have heard over the years about Kailua was that there are just too many tourists and it's become overrun and that the locals are being pushed out. Mr. Pregitzer, let's start with you. Do you think that that's an issue? And if it is, how do you retain the spirit of the town while still balancing the needs of business?
I do. I think that's a big issue in Kailua, and I've seen our town change drastically, especially in the last 20 years or so, as corporations have been coming in like A&B and buying up all the land and then renting them out to mostly mainland corporations and chains and pushing out all the mom and pop stores from Kailua. It's drastically changed the character of our town. And that's something that as a community, we need to be fighting back against to preserve our community. I think that these practices that these corporations like A&B are using are predatory on our small mom and pop shops. And we need to be looking at as a legislature at a way that we can limit what they're doing to the properties and to the leases and requiring from the lessees so that it fits with the character of our town and isn't just going to be sold out to other corporations that are then going to take the money and take it out of our town and our state to the mainland.
Mr. Branco, what do you think? How do we balance the needs of business while also retaining the spirit of that community?
Absolutely. This has been something on my mind for a while. As someone who was born and raised in Kailua, and some of our greatest hits are all gone. Andy's Drive-In, Craig's Bakery, Cornette's, Kailua, and the character of Kailua is changing, and we need to make sure that's preserved. And as the next state legislator for Kailua, I would make sure that happens. I would do this in several ways. One, I would love to reintroduce the bill from Senator Thielen that would stop commercial buses going across the state on Sunday. I think also we need to stop helicopter flyovers in Kailua. But more importantly, we have to help and protect the treasures that we have in Kailua, Kauai Nui Marsh, Kailua Beach. That's something we need to do. And I do believe there's a way to work with our business community. Kailua has a history of small businesses. The Compost Dairy, Kailua was a town and is a town of small business owners. And our small business owners love Kailua. And I believe this is an opportunity for us to work with them to make sure we maintain the character of the town, but make sure the town is working for us.
Okay, well, let's talk about the beach. You did bring that up there briefly. It seems that erosion has been an ongoing problem for Kailua Beach. That is a treasure, of course, of that community. Every few years, it seems that the sand from the nearby stream is redistributed along the shoreline. Is there a more permanent solution? Is this the best way to deal with this issue? Mr. Pregitzer, we'll start with you.
So this is an issue that's been getting worse and worse over the last several years as seawalls have been built along the shoreline with the houses that are right adjacent to the ocean to protect their private property. These seawalls have dispersed the energy of the waves down the shore and have caused greater increase in the erosion of our beaches. And if you go down to Kailua Beach and Lanikai Beach, you'll see where the beach is gone. And so the state is forced then to get sand to replace it. Sometimes that's from the canal. And as many of us that live here know, that canal doesn't exactly contain the cleanest water anymore, unfortunately. And so that sand is placed up on the shores and our keiki are playing in it and they are now getting infections from it. We need to be looking at different areas to get our sand from. We can't always be getting it from the same area. We need to be making sure that it is environmentally sustainable, what we're doing, where we're getting our sand to replace the shorelines. We have to stop building seawalls and permanent structures because that is just increasing the problem. It's not helping the problem. And we need to have a hard conversation and look at a managed retreat from our shorelines that are in flood zones. A lot of these houses are longtime families that own them. And over the years, these houses are starting to fall into the ocean and the property is starting to disappear. And eventually, they're not going to be able to maintain it anymore. So as a state, we need to look at what we can do in order to help those residents that have been longtime residents and owned the land long before we knew these things were going to happen. I'm not talking about new owners. Yeah.
Mr. Branco, I want to give you the same question as to how we do the best to preserve that beach.
Thank you. Recently, I met with some environmentalists who run some nonprofits on protecting the beach. And they shared with me that there are some opportunities when you look at the Carolinas or in Florida, what they're doing in how to prevent sea erosion in some natural, sustainable ways. So if elected, that's one place I want to look at. But it leads me to the bigger question is, we can't just climate change is an issue. So if we keep trying to repair, it's kind of like bailing out water from a tub with the tap on, right? We need to get the root of the issue is why our beaches are being eroded. And so that's one reason, one of my proposals is there is concern from the small business community about single-use plastic. And so I believe the state should take the bold step and lead by example and stop. The state should not purchase any more single-use plastics. The state should lead by example. And that's one way we can do it. Another way, going back to my diplomatic service, is that we have a lot of sister city relationships. And we all know that 90% of the trash that comes onto our shores actually is from around the world. So these sister city relationships right now don't have teeth. We need to be pursuing relationships with cities around the world that actually cause to our trash problem, and actually work with them to adopt the same sustainable policies that we believe in. We need to make sure that this is a global problem. This is a global problem, and we need to make sure that we're working with all partners to make sure that we're able to keep our beaches pristine. And that's what, absolutely.
We're down to the last question, unfortunately. I hear your passion from both of you for this community. We'd like to know just briefly from each of you, what sets you apart from your opponent? Mr. Pregitzer, we'll start with you.
Thank you. So as I said before, I've been working in the area. I live here. I've been an advocate in the area for the community, for our natural resources. And that's something I've shown that I will continue to do if elected. Protecting access to our beaches, maintaining our trails, working to protect and expand workers' rights in the state and union rights. These are all things that I've been working on here over the last decade or so, and these are things that I will continue to work on if elected. So that's
Mr. Branco, what sets you apart from your opponent?
Absolutely. My family we believe in service. Both of my grandfathers have served in the military in the Korean and Vietnam Wars. My mother's a nurse, and I served our country for 7 years as a U.S. diplomat. I really, really strongly believe in service. And I believe that my upbringing, being rooted here in the community, being fourth generation from Kailua, hearing the stories of how Kailua has changed, but also being hopeful for the future, I believe that's how I will be able to properly advocate for Kailua, is by combining my diverse experience as a U.S. diplomat abroad, but also being rooted in the community and being hopeful for the future that we can come together and keep Kailua and Kāneʻohe Bay vibrant.
Okay, thank you so much, gentlemen. We want to thank Patrick Branco and Micah Pregitzer for joining us tonight. Up next, we're going to hear from the Republican candidates for State House District 51. But first, please enjoy this Hiki no story by Kalāheo High School students. We'll be right back.
Yeah, because it's biting too much on one side. That's why it's crooked. And it'll get stuck.
While
like
many
that.
young adults find the direction they need in high school, Kāneʻohe, a nonprofit organization, is here to help when high school fails. Kāneʻohe provides education, job opportunities, and workforce training for youth that are homeless, high school dropouts, incarcerated, or looking for guidance. The program is located in Olomana on the windward side of Oahu, working to empower young adults that society may have turned their back on, and put them on track to be successful and contributing members of society. Some of the mentors here experienced hardships in their own life when they were young and want a chance to steer others in the right direction.
I had my father, really. He was a policeman for 32 years. So he was my mentor, and I always looked up to him. A lot of these kids don't have fathers, and if they do, they're not really up to par. So, I try my best to be a role model to them so they get something at least to look at. Sometimes at least 8 hours of the day they can come here and look up to somebody and feel good about themselves. And yeah, I try to be.
While at Kāneʻohe, young adults between ages 14 and 26 learn construction and other trades, as well as have the opportunity to earn their GED.
I've been to prison. I've been to Oklahoma prison. I've been to Halawa at least 6 times. So I know it's not the right place. It's not a good place to be. And I just try to make these kids understand that that's a bad route. Their parents are going there or were there, and it's just not any place for any human being, especially the children of Hawaii. Oh, you gotta come back, right there. Yeah, perfect.
No matter their past, all the mentors here do their best to make a positive impact on Hawaii's youth.
The kids is like me when I was young. Yeah. I think most of the mentors here are going to be in that same position. Yeah. So we grew up hard-headed and grew up kind of on the streets doing stupid street things, and then being able to become successful in a world where you have to you got to be law-abiding, and all that stuff, and seeing the kids transition from where they are doing stupid street things into becoming law-abiding, productive members of society. That's pretty much what drives it. Yeah.
Kāneʻohe is a community that works to better not only themselves, but each other as well.
I think we have a good blend because everybody has the same purpose here. You go to other schools, you go to other programs, you go to other universities. Everybody's there for their own purpose, and everybody has different purposes. Here, everybody has a common purpose, and that's to extinguish pain. And that's to make a better life for all of us together as a team.
They're really good guys. They're nice, they're respectful, and I know they all can contribute to society. We just got to give them a chance.
This is Keholani Bringus from Kalāheo High School for Hiki No.
Welcome back to the second half of our Insights conversation with the two candidates running for the Republican nomination for State House 51. The Windward Oʻahu district covers Kailua and Waimānalo. Democratic incumbent Chris Lee is running for a seat in the state Senate. So now to the candidates. Doni Chong was born and raised in Hawaii and has lived in Kailua for 30 years. Prior to her bid for political office, she was a small business owner expanding on sustainable probiotic farming as a fermentation specialist. Kukana Kama-Toth is a Waimānalo resident who serves as the vice chair on the Waimānalo Neighborhood Board. She's a community advocate and a mother of 5. Welcome to you, ladies. Thank you so much for being here tonight. This is the first, I think, for all of us, masks, of course, and that is because of COVID-19. We want to be safe here in the studio, but it does bring up a larger issue, of course. The governor has now extended the travel quarantine. Let's start with you. Do you agree with that decision to delay allowing trans-Pacific travel till at least the 1st of September?
Yes, I do. Hawaii is a very kept space right now, and we have actually been, protected for the most part, being that we are an island, and Hawaii has shown its ability to be able to quarantine at home, to keep each other safe. We are very successful doing so. And I think that it is a smart move to do for our governor to keep that quarantine in place and to keep our communities and our ohana and everyone here in Hawaii safe.
Do you think it should go beyond the 1st of September?
I think that we need to look at data. We need to really look at Hawaii first. That is actually what we need to do. I feel that too many times we are always looking at the macro perspective of things, where we need to look at what's here and develop the strengths that's currently here. And in order to do so, we need to just focus on Hawaii first.
Okay. The same question to you. Do you agree with his decision to delay the reopening?
Unfortunately, no. I don't believe in the delay. I think I'm looking at it from a more economical perspective. Business owners, small business owners. I do know that there is validity with it. I do understand and respect the need for medical safeguarding. Yet when I see how many cases occur and the population of at-risk groups, I don't believe that we need to shut down the whole economy. I hear from both sides, the business side, as well as those who are scared. I think there's a collaboration in the middle that we can find.
What do you think would be a better way to do it than what he's done?
So I think we should do the testing, pre-testing before they come. I believe in getting something like a COVID clearance card of sorts so that we can screen out those. And I realize that people may be asymptomatic. However, I don't believe that we can shut down the whole economy. Maybe we can go back to social distancing for the at-risk populations, do the mask wearing, of course, but then we have to realize that economically we're hurting right now. If we delay it, people are one paycheck away from being houseless, so there has to be a balance with that.
Well, let's talk about the economy. The state is looking at a budget shortfall anywhere between $1.5 to over $2 billion. The lawmakers obviously control the purse strings in this state. What do you think, where would be an area that you think we could cut, or what is a way to deal with that shortfall?
I have to kind of talk about what we were just talking about. I am in no way of not having our economy start up again. The quarantine I'm speaking about is in travelers coming here. I believe that we need to diversify our economy and not count so much on our tourism. There are sustainable economies that we can tap into, like forestry. I've been meeting with some of the mills in Waimānalo, and there is really an industry available there that we could tap into. In Montana, a gentleman shared with me that their mining and their forestry is what actually paid for education. It pays for medical, and I don't think Hawaii has really explored that. With having 900 employees in the forestry department of the state and not really one employee looking at forestry things, kind of makes me tilt my head to the side. I don't think we are looking economy as we should. I think that Hawaii has been really focused on tourism for so long that that's the norm, and I think that there are available options out there. They just have to step outside their comfort zone and check it out, and that's my mana'o.
When you do look, though, in the short term, because we aren't having the tourists come, at the budget shortfall that we're facing, the governor has said that it's possible that state workers could be furloughed, teachers could have salaries cut. Where do you think the budget is too fat right now that we could actually, save some money and actually make our balanced budget?
For me, being a community advocate, I look from the ground up, whereas most is looking from the top down to the ground. I would think that would have to be a collective piece. I don't know everything, I am not connected. I am not a politician. I am simply a resident community member who is seeing the effects and the consequences to the decisions being made by leadership. And so that's really the mindset and approach I'm coming from. I believe when I look at it, I have 5 children and they've kind of been the ones I've learned through. As far as education, it's always been the thing that gets cut first. It's the furlough days that our children went through during lingual administration. I think a whole revamp, like I said, it's just this normalized view of seeing things how it currently functions instead of being innovated, and so I can't say this particular thing or that particular thing, but I can say that my ears are open and I'm ready to learn. Enlighten me.
Ms. Chong, let's go to you on this question. We're facing some pretty serious budget shortfalls here. Where would you cut?
So actually, first, I'm a very fiscal conservative person, so I look for reviewing the budget, looking to see what it is and where we're appropriating the funds. If there's things that we have appropriated for that we're not utilizing, for example, Aloha Stadium and the rebuilding, we can shift those funds over there. There's also the look at the CIP projects, the capital improvement projects. What is it that we should put it in priority order and rank it as such? I think not only in looking at cutting, but the entrepreneurial side comes in and says, well, where are the revenue opportunities? Where is it that instead of cutting from the budget, is there short-term, low-hanging fruit opportunities where we can actually create revenue? One of my thoughts was a 1% COVID fee, and that would be similar to the TAT, and it would be when tourists come safely, we would impose on them a 1%. Other states are doing that. And so it seems to be post-COVID a very normal, acceptable thing. And I think if we could slowly shift from how do we cut and take away, as Kukana has said, we see our education being, suffering, our children suffering. Shift the perspective to maybe how can we create some low-hanging fruit revenue to balance that out.
Let's talk a little bit about homelessness. Every part of the island, of course, has homeless issues. In the district that you both are running in, we see tents on the beach. What can we do to help those folks? What can the legislature do right away to get those tents off the beach and get those people into better circumstance?
Well, like we all know, it's multifaceted. As the chair of the Residentially Challenged Committee for Waimānalo, my community advocacy started a long time ago. What I think, as far as the state level, I feel that there needs to be a more better working relationship with the city. I think that gap in between the jurisdiction issues is what sort of sets back progress. Mm-hmm. Currently in Waimānalo, we have Kahumana, which is now stepping in to take over Weinberg, which was a transitional housing facility, which is now going to be an emergency housing facility. And their approach that they're taking, it's a pretty fascinating approach that comes with not only economic stabilities, but it gives them a sense of purpose. It helps them to create their own foods. I think the approach that Kahumana is taking is something that should be duplicated. And in order for that to happen, they need funding, and so, like I said, it's multifaceted, jurisdictions is always the issue, and sweeping. We cannot criminalize our houseless and homeless because they're houseless and homeless. I had to stand in the gap for the community of Waimānalo when they wanted to sweep our house list when they were doing a beautification project at Waimānalo Beach Park. We, at the Waimānalo Neighborhood Board, we had to stand in the gap and ask our governor to agree to not sweep them as we work towards solution. And so currently Waimānalo has Auntie Blanche McMillan, who is working with other community members as well as current legislators, to further along her project and to get it to where it needs to be. But the problem that we're seeing is very common amongst all different communities. It's the communication with the community and allowing them to take part in the discussions that create the facilities or the structures that's supposed to help them.
What's your take on this? How do we better help so that, you drive into Waimānalo and you see that beautiful beach and then you see those tents and all those people suffering? What can we do?
First for that, I'm so concerned because there isn't any guardrail. And I know it would just take one accident, for someone to get badly hurt. That said, however, I believe that we need to look through public-private partnerships, and we need to go ahead and create, as Kukana has said, the Kahumanu village approach. A lot of people in the homeless community, really, if you look at them, they cluster, and it's really because they need community. They just don't know where their community is. If we created communities or tiny village homes in geographic locations around the island, where we can have them enter and actually classify them by what type of homeless they are. We have the functioning homeless who can work, but they're one step away from not having a paycheck, or the mentally challenged, or the drug addicted. So I think it's a combination of public-private partnerships, tiny home villages, and community concept to help them rehabilitate.
Let's stay with you for a second on this. District 51 also includes the very popular tourist spot, Lanikai. A lot of people have complained about traffic in and out of that community, just the one loop in and out. There's been stuff done for parking restrictions and what have you, but should more be done to keep that area a little less crowded?
Yes, I do agree with that. I realize that Kailua has just exploded on the internet, and it's one of the most beautiful beach. So of course everybody wants to come. With that, however, our environment is being taxed. And so our infrastructure, right now we don't have parking. We have to wait in line in traffic. So yes, we need to look at that. We need to possibly consider Sunday neighborhood days where it's just for the residents, to enjoy their home, their beach. And I think going forward,
how would that work, though? I'm curious about that idea. How would you say no rental cars? I mean, how can ask for a state ID on the beach? Like, how does that actually happen on a practical level?
I believe it's going to take collaboration. So I like to always involve all parties and say, because for some people, it's Expedia or the travel agency, that's part of their income. But if we understand as a community that we need to find a collaborative solution, we need to understand that the residents there, they like their home, their community that way. I don't want to infringe on someone's discrimination of sorts. How can we do that? I think it would be a partnership. I think it could be where we define culturally appropriate, economical, tourist programs where people understand that we're going to define a new tourism. So when you come into Kailua, be similar to what the Amish do. If you go into Amish on Sundays, everything is closed. So if you come into Kailua, this is a Sunday neighborhood day. So maybe some of these attractions won't be open or available, or it's half a day, and we would invite the buy-in from the tourist industry.
What's your take on that?
I think Kailua, Ka'ohau, Lanikai. I believe Lanikai and Waimānalo have similarities as far as their beaches. Both communities championed bills into law that protected the over-commercialization of their beaches. In Waimānalo, I championed Bill 8 into law. Why I'm sharing that with you, though, is because Lanikai has had pilot programs to be able to shut down parking and things like that on specific weekends. whereas our beach lot residents in Waimānalo continue to feel the overage and the overusage of their areas, and having out of community people coming into their areas, you know. And I mean, for me, I'm a big stickler for communal rights. You know, I really am, and communal accessibility to their natural resources. You know, and it's no different than what was here previously through ahupua'a living, you know, and it's just being, I mean, I don't know how we can move towards it, but I know what needs to be done. You know, both communities need these protections. And I feel that if we could pilot these programs, I know it's sort of worked in Lanikai to have no parking on the weekends, which kind of kept their roads clear. I would like to actually see that in the beach lot area in Waimānalo, to be done there as well, you know. But it comes down to being respectful. When you go into somebody else's area, you should be respectful. You know, that's just, I would think that's common practice, but unfortunately it's not anymore here in Hawaii. But I would like to see that value come back to life. And I'm optimistic. I'm sure it can be done.
I think we would all like that. Both of you are running, of course, as Republicans. Voters will be casting votes for president in this election in November. I'd like to ask both of you if you support the current president. Do you support Donald Trump?
You know, that question comes up often. Mm-hmm. My response is I support the office of the President of the United States. And whoever's in the office at that time, may it be currently President Trump, formerly President Obama, and so on and so forth. I'm a traditional, conservative, loving American and Hawaiian citizen. As such, do I relate with some of the issues or some of possibly the mannerisms? No. But then again, that is the office of the president. So that is what I salute. I know we're very far removed from Washington, D.C. And so a lot of people ask me, oh, are you, for Donald Trump? I said, I will always support the office of the President of the United States.
What's your response?
There are things that I do admire of him. Mm-hmm. When I was looking into the platform, like I said, I'm not a politician. I was just trying to find something that was aligned with the values that I hold. And would I want to put a wall up around Hawaii and keep us safe right now? Yes, I would. Would I like to close down my airport? Yes, I would. Because I want to take care of Hawaii first, and when I see Donald Trump, I kind of see that in him, as far as him wanting to take care of Americans first. As far as voting, I'm still looking into it, I'm being very truthful, and that's one thing you can get from me. I'm very transparent, I am not ready to say if I am or not, because I'm still doing homework, I don't believe in party. It should be always about the party. I think it should be about the person, and so that's my answer.
Okay.
I'm very Hawaii-centric.
Well, let's talk about one of the issues that I know that you've worked really hard to champion. You were part of course, the Save Our Sherwoods campaign, yes, the effort to stop that redevelopment there. The mayor has said that, that's off the table now. Ricky from Waimānalo wants to know what's going on with the soccer field in Waimānalo next to the gym. What kind of, were you against the redevelopment and the makeover entirely, or do you think that it was just the way that the city went about it?
I think that because, we know projects take a long time to develop. You need to make the project, you need to find the money for the project, and I think that the intent of it was a good one. It was during a time where sports was just huge in our community, because Waimānalo breeds athletes. We do, and as I have 5 children who are all athletes. I'm a coach, my husband's a coach, we're very sports driven. But sports has changed. It's not like that anymore. Everything's about clubs. You have to go to Waipio, you have to go to town, you have to go to Mililani. All of these competitive clubs aren't in our district, and so my whole thing at first was I knew about it. I was very aware of the project. I tried to present it to our neighborhood board about 5 years ago, and nobody really was saying anything about it, you know? And when it came up, I do a lot of initiation in advocacy in my community, and so I waited to see who was gonna step up to do something, because I'm the one that they call or come to the gate to be like, Kukana, did you know this? This is what's happening, you know, can you go do this? And so I wanted to see others step outside of their comfort zone to take the initiative. And once I did, I gave them my ear. And once I heard concerns, I chose to advocate for them. You know, it wasn't like I just went out there and wanted to rally up the troops. I talked with our councilmen, I talked with the kupuna families to hear what was the mana'o behind it, you know, and I took it all into account. But once I found out it was a funerary, that changed everything. And I believe that's a huge issue for us here in Hawaii when it comes to our kupuna iwi. And the community said it was there. It's on the national registry, for goodness sakes, you know? And we were constantly told that, no, there's no iwi there. But we just found one on April 6th. So, you know, it's those kinds of things where we really have to take a step back. And yes, construction is important. Yes, we want to make projects work. Yes, we want to create revenues. But we need to remember, what's the first most important thing? It's our
cut you off there because we're tight
No
on
problem.
time. I'm so sorry, but I want to give you an opportunity to respond before we run the clock out here. What's your take on the way on what should happen to that going forward? Are you satisfied with the outcome now?
So a lot of the concerns, actually, I echo with Kukana. I think it's a combination of both. I think it's the way they did it. I think the project was scoped and initiated many years ago. A lot has changed since then. I think they needed to revisit the plan again to see what its effectivity would be, especially traffic flow. I know that that's a concern, and flooding was a concern. So I think, given the fact with the National Registry that there were kupuna iwi bones found there, and it was COVID, for the mayor to do that, I think that was questionable.
Okay. We do have limited time, just a few minutes, so I want the audience to get a chance to know a little bit more about you personally before we sign off. What makes you passionate about this? Why do you want this job?
Well, I've been in Hawaii 30 years. I worked in Hawaii for 30 years, all for Hawaii. I started at Kamehameha School's Bishop Estate. I then moved on to the for-profit, which is in HAWAI'I Electric. I learned energy sustainability. And I knew I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to know that my grandchild one day will remember this place as a beautiful place to live. So all of my efforts have gone into working for Hawaiian nonprofits or Hawaii businesses. My grandparents actually came here in 1889. They started the Mo'ili'ili Japanese language school. And my grandfather was the first Japanese police captain. So I think community service is in my DNA.
Okay. Same question to you. What makes you want to have this job?
Because I love my home. I'm the 6th generation Hawaiian homestead leasee of Waimānalo. I'm a homeowner. I was born and raised in Waimānalo. I'm gonna live in Waimānalo. I'm gonna die in Waimānalo. I went and I did almost all my schooling in Kailua. I've raised my children in this community. I'm a Kalāheo High School graduate. 3 of my sons, I have 5 children, 3 of them have graduated from Kailua. My husband graduated from Kailua. My mom taught for 30 years at Lanikai Elementary and St. Anthony's. That's my home, and I love it. I love my aina, I love my ocean, and why not take a step into and level up, I've been protecting it for some years now since my enlightenment. I just feel like the experiences I've had has seasoned me to do this, and I'm ready to take on this responsibility and further it outside of Waimānalo to include Ka'elepulu, Ka'ohao, Pohakupu, Kukanono, I'm ready. I'm ready.
Okay. We have just less than 2 minutes left, but I want to squeeze in a few more at least one more viewer question. This is an interesting one, especially as Republicans. Top government officials should be taking a pay cut to help the people of Hawaii. What's your take on that?
Lead by example. So yes, in times of need, I believe we need to all go ahead and take a look and see where sacrifice occurs. It's never easy. However, I do believe in leading by example.
Okay, what's your take on that? Top government officials should be taking a pay cut to help the people.
Yes, sis, we need to lead by example. You know, through my own struggles, so I've been at every aspect, struggling, been doing good, 5 babies on welfare, had Medicare, all that, Medicaid, Quest, and honestly, why not take a pay cut? We work, you get to have a job and really work hard in it for half of a year and get paid full salary for it. And if you get to get a pension because you're in it for 10 years, then you're gonna continue to get this money. So why not take a little paycheck cut?
Sounds like a yes from both of you.
Yeah.
And we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Mahalo to you. We, of course, thank our guests, the Republican candidates for State House District 51, Doni Chong and Kukana Kama-Toth. Next week on Insights, we'll hear from the 4 candidates vying for the Democratic nomination in this race. Please do join us then. I'm Yanji Denise for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Ahui ho.